Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Kevin Anthony from the Fab Lab here at Ball High School, and today we're going to talk about how to make some really cool keychains out of this type of wood here. This is just like 1/4-inch plywood, and it's laser cut, and we're going to make some cool stuff like keychains, just like this. And I'm going to show you how to do that and get that set up in Illustrator, and you can make your own. Okay, here we go. Okay, now that we've decided what we want to make, we're going to use Adobe Illustrator, which is part of the Adobe Creative Cloud suite, to lay out our keychain design on a page. So as long as you're a student at GISD with an email address at gisd.org, you have access to the entire Adobe suite. So what we want to do is we want to go to the Adobe the window here. We're looking for Adobe Illustrator 2022. We're going to launch that. Now you have to log in each and every time. If you're logged in somewhere else, you'll see a message about being logged in somewhere else, but you can just kick yourself out of the other computer you're on. You might be a classroom computer or maybe your laptop. So I'm going to put my credentials in here. Click on continue. This is a company or school account, and then my password. And you have to do this every time you use one of these products. Okay, so we end up here at the splash screen to begin a new project. So a couple things I want to talk about is just some best practices, because when you work in the industry, you're probably going to be working with a lot of different people on the same project, the same file, and you don't want to have a bunch of miscommunication or confusion about what you're working on. So for example, here we have this document by default is in points, so you definitely want to do a new file. Now, by default, I have mine set as inches. You should always be working in inches unless your client or whatever customer wants otherwise. So inches, the orientation is up to you. By default, the laser cutter, the width is that it can cut is 32 by 18. So I'm just going to leave it like that because that's what I like to work in. And we're going to do RGB color. This is my document here. It's going to be 32 inches wide by 18 inches high, and it's going to be in inches. A lot of times I see a lot of students leave this as pixels, so it's very difficult to work in pixels, especially if you're working on the same document. So I'm going to click on Create. What we're going to end up with is a blank page. It's going to be 32 by 18, a blank page. This is basically, we're looking down the laser cutter layout. Another good practice is to turn on your ruler. So Control R turns your ruler on. This is going to be in inches because I told it was inches. So we're good on that. So now we're going to move into the design stage, and we're going to lay out our keychains and our design, and then we'll move from there. Now we're back to the Adobe Illustrator layout. My layout is 32 inches by 18. I'm not going to use all that, but I like to have it just so I can make sure I have enough space. I'm laying it out for the laser cutter. I know I'm going to make this on a laser cutter, so that's why I made my sheet to match that. Because you might have an example. We're going to design like 1 or 2 keychains, but maybe we want to make 50 of them. We can line them all up on the one piece of wood and cut them all at the same time. So next example, I'm going to just make a round keychain. So the round ellipse tool, if you hold down the rectangle tool, choose ellipse. I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to hold the shift key down to constrain it, and I'm going to make a circle. Say, I'm not sure how big keychains should be, but maybe 1.5 inches or so would be good. Over here in my properties, I could also do it by precision. I want to turn on this maintain width and height proportions. I want to say I want it 1.5, which is 1.5 inches. That's going to be our keychain right there. So that's that, and then maybe I want to do a rectangle. I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to click and drag. I also want to make this square here, rectangle. I'm clicking over here, this area here, 1.5 inches. So now we have a circle and we have a square. They're 1.5 inches in the size. So I'm going to zoom in, which is Control plus. These are all good keys that y'all should learn. If you have a question about a shortcut key, there's no reason to try to figure it out. It's everything, the shortcut key is on the right-hand side of the command. You can see undo is Control-Z, redo is Shift, Control-Z, cut, copy, paste, etc. Every menu has the shortcut keys on the side. So what I did just now was zoom in, zoom out. That's Control plus, Control minus. Those are very simple things that you should know when you're working on this stuff here. To move the page around without disturbing anything, you hold the space bar down and you click and you drag. That way I'm moving this around here. So now we're going to add some text. I'm going to choose the text tool and I'm going to basically just click and drag in my circle. Now this right here, you might be wondering what this is called. Maybe you know already. This is called greeking. It's just used for placement. It doesn't mean anything. It's just to show you how the text will look when it's in that area right there. So by default, depending on how you have your Illustrator set up, Myriad Pro seems to be the one it always chooses. If you keep your text highlighted, it's highlighted because it's black. I'm going to choose just some other font in here. Maybe I'll do a Serif Font and a sans serif font. So one will have little tails and one won't. So let's say for the first one I'll do this copperplate Gothic bold. And this is what's called a serif font because it has the little tails on it, on the edges. You can see right here. This is a serif. It's a French word. It means these little tails are here. That's a serif. If you have a sans serif font, it means without the little tails. So that'd be like Helvetica, Futura, those blocky kind of text. So right now, this guy is he's left justified. I want to put it in the center. I can click this button here. Align center. You see our center is done there. I still have it selected. I'm going to type in my name here. That's going to be sort of my text right there that I'm going to use. And I want to make it bigger. So I have to select the text with my text tool and then triple click or Control A to select all. And a real quick way to do that, to make the text bigger or smaller, I'm going to do Control Shift and then greater than, or you can do Control Shift less than, and you get your font there, type big. Now I want it that big. You can see it kind of jump down. That's okay though. It's just the bounding box is not wide enough, so I'm going to grab this guy right here and pull it over on the end. So this is centered text inside that circle. So for example, this is a thing I see a lot too. You have to learn how to use your page layout stuff. Like if I want these two things absolutely aligned to each other, I'm going to go over here to Properties, and you see this where it says Align right here. This is left align, center align, right align, etc. I want these two objects here, which I have both selected. I want them to be centered exactly on the horizontal right there. So now they're centered, but also I want them to be centered vertically. So I'm going to go over here to the vertical align. And sometimes it doesn't always work. In this case, it doesn't. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. It looks good enough for me. It's centered. Okay, so now one last thing I need for this guy here. I need to choose my Ellipse Tool. I'm going to draw a circle to put the keys through there. So we're going to draw that out there. And I want that circle to be probably 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go over to my Properties panel and I'm going to do 0.25, which is 1/4 of an inch. I want this to be aligned in the center like that with the text. This might have to come down a little bit because when this gets cut with the laser, this part right here is kind of thin. So what I don't want though, I don't want this filled. So I'm going to go over here to my my color selection tool, and I'm going to say on the fill, I'm going to say no fill right there. But I do want a black outline, which is called the stroke. Right now there's none selected, so I'm going to say the stroke is 1, just for this example, and it's going to be black. And we're going to change all this here later because when we get into the discussion about laser cutting and engraving, the colors will matter. So now I have my square over here. I don't have to recreate the wheel. I can select both of these things. I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I'm going to click on the text and the object. I'm going to hit Control C, Control V, which is copy and paste. And I'm just going to move this around here to kind of put it in the center, maybe. If I'm not sure, leave that selected, select the square, and I'm going to select the vertical and horizontal line tool, and I'll just make sure it's in the center there. So here's your friend also, Control S or File, Save. You want to save your work. You'll be prompted to ask where. I would highly recommend that you utilize the Creative Cloud. Go to Save to Creative Cloud, give it a name that makes sense so you can find it later. Once again, if you're working with other people, make sure you save the file that makes sense to other people too. And I'm going to call this Keychains. How about Keychain Layout? I'm going to call it, and I'll give it a date here, 9/20/22, okay? That's going to be saved in my Creative Cloud. Okay, when we'll come back, we'll talk about getting these set up for cutting on the laser. So now we're back with Adobe Illustrator, and we still have our document. We're done with our design part of it. We have our circle keychain, we have our square keychain, we have our text in there, and we have our holes cut there. So what we need to do now is we need to prepare it for the laser cutter. Laser cutter operates on 2 specific colors that you have to set up at least the first time, and then once you do that, they'll be part of your library for the Adobe Creative Cloud, and you don't have to recreate them every time. So I'm going to zoom in here to my design, and I'm going to hit Control plus to kind of zoom in with what I have selected, move it around a little bit. So by default, the color that the laser engraver or cutter uses for engraving is black. So anything that's black will be engraved. So basically the laser will start and it'll go back and forth and it'll engrave. Same thing with that. So right now, if we were to send this to the laser engraver, it would go, but it would take forever, and we wouldn't get the result that we wanted because it's only going to engrave what's here in the black. What we want is we want the name, the text here engraved, but we want the hole here and the keychain itself to be cut out of the material. So it uses a very specific color for cutting, which is called vectoring. So instead of going back and forth, it's going to follow the line in a vector. So point A to point B. That's what Illustrator is based on. It's vector graphics. So I'm going to go over here to my swatches. If you choose any of these colors here, they're not going to work because it has to be specifically, it has to be an RGB color. So red, green, and blue. So we're going to make a new color. We're going to do a new swatch. The swatch is a color. And we're going to give it a name. We're going to say cut. And then the mode is going to be, you can leave this process color the same, global the same. Color mode, make it RGB. And we're going to make our red, we're going to move the slider over to 255. The green and the blue will leave at 0. This will be our color that the laser cutter knows when it sees the red, it will cut. Now we know that that is the one we made because it has a little white triangle at the bottom here. And that's going to be part of your library that you can pull up anytime you log into any machine that has Adobe Creative Cloud. You can pull up this color, you can create your own color swatches. So that's the first part of it there. Now it does have to be, I'm kind of moving these windows around, looking at the swatches and looking at the properties window. So I know that I want this thing to cut out. So this is an out. I'm going to hold the shift key. I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to cut the square out. And I'm going to cut this circle out for the hole. So I have all 4 of those selected. So I have this cut out, this cut out, this cut out, this cut out. Currently, they're black. I don't want them to be black. I want them to be our color that we made. I'm going to cut, click on that. I don't want it filled. That's not what I asked it to do. So I'm going to say fill, none. But the stroke itself, I'm going to click on that black line right there. I want it to be red. Okay. So right now we have black, which will be engraved. We have red that's going to be cut. So technically this is correct, but if we send this right now without telling it the line weight or the stroke, it will basically engrave everything. So what I want to make sure is that our red lines, I'm going to click this, hold shift. I'm still holding shift, select the square and the circle. Right here where it says stroke, it's very specific. It has to be 0.001. And we click OK on that, click off of this. So right now, when the laser cutter sees this, it will cut this color red and it will engrave this color black. Now we're into the phase of this project which would be considered to be production. We've done our design, our layout. We've kind of got it set up how we want it. Now we're going to move over to the laser cutter workstation, which is where I am right now. And I'm launched the open splash page here for Adobe Illustrator. And these are my files right here. I'm looking at my home. This is my keychain layout that I saved to the cloud on the other station. So I'm going to open that up. And hopefully it should open up. Okay, there's our design that we worked on in the other workstation. I'm just going to zoom out here just a little bit. So right now, as I mentioned to you before, I like to use the final size to work on. So this is the laser cutter bed. It represents 32 by 18. Now we're not going to use all this space, but a good habit is I'm only going to cut 2 of these for right now. So I'm just going to move them just kind of up here a little bit. We can move them later with the laser software, but for right now, I'll put them right there. So the only thing we have to do now from this point, from the workstation for the laser cutter in Illustrator, is to send it to print. So we already have our red and we have our black. We've established these are going to cut out and this is going to engrave. So if we go to File, Print, or Control P, we're going to go to Print. You don't have to change anything in here at all. It's going to go to this VLS, which is the laser system. I'm going to click on Print. Okay, now we're done with Illustrator for the moment. I'm going to minimize this right here. On my desktop, I have a little icon here. It's called UCP, Universal Control Panel. I want to open that up. Okay, now that we have this program open, it's called the UCP. It's the Universal Control Panel. It's what controls the laser cutter. Laser cutter we have is called a VLS 6.60. It's a 60 watt laser. CO2 laser. It can cut materials up to about a ½ inch thick. So now we have our thing that we printed to the VLS software. This basically represents the laser cutter bed. So this is, you can see it's 32 by 18. So we're looking down at the bed. And I can move this, if I choose a little tool right here, the little arrows, I can grab this right here and I can move it anywhere I want based on the material. So if I had a big old sheet of 18 by 32 wood there, I could put this anywhere, on that wood to, cut up here, cut down there. Sometimes you end up with scrap pieces and you have to move these things around to kind of use every little bit of material we have. So just for this purpose, I'm going to just put it up here because it's always good to kind of put your material and line it up on the corner so it's straight. So right now at this point, the laser cutter is turned off. So I'm going to turn it on over here in the upper right, activate the engraver, and we'll hear it turn on. So at this point, the laser cutter doesn't know what to do. Basically, if we run this, it'll cut this and it'll engrave it, but it doesn't know the size of the material. So what we need to do first is tell it what's going on. So if we go to Settings, and if we go to Materials Database, these are also presets you can use every time, or you can save your own once you get your materials. I happen to use a lot of the same settings over and over, so I save them, but I'm going to go through this here so that you can see what the process is. So we're going to do, the material we're working on today is basically, it's Baltic birch, it's a plywood, and it's kind of soft, it's a general soft wood. So right now, it doesn't know the thickness of the material, so we're going to get our calipers, and we're going to grab a piece of the birch, and we're going to measure with our calipers to see what the thickness of our material is, and we're going to enter that in decimal format. So right now, I have a measurement of 0.20 for our material. So I'm going to type 0.20, and I'm going to click on Apply, and OK. Now what's going to happen when the laser cutter starts, it's going to lower or raise this bed depending on what material was cut previously, and it'll bring it to the right height for the laser based on the thickness of the material that we put in. Okay, so now we've reached the phase where we're ready to cut this material here. I have my piece of wood. I'm going to try to use this spot right here. Try to use this material as much as we can. I'm going to place this on the laser cutter. I have it turned on, and I also have the exhaust turned on, and I have my file ready to go in the UCP software. So now I'm going to place our wood into the laser cutter. Okay, just for this example's sake, you don't have to put it here, but I'm going to put this in the upper left-hand corner because I like to keep things straight. Upper left-hand corner there, that's our material. And then we're going to close the lid. We're going to go over to our UCP software, and we're going to look for our file, which is right here. I have the laser cutter, which is turned on. It's ready to go. I already have this measurement in here, which we determined was 0.20 inches. It's a decimal, so it knows what the thickness of the material is. And right now, It's sitting about 4.5 inches because I cut those a minute ago. Now, if we were to cut that right now, it would probably end up cutting in the same spot. So I'm going to move it over this way. This represents our laser bed. I'm going to grab the arrow tool here. I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to grab this file and kind of move it right about there. And then we're good to go. The machine is turned on. And then over here, you have to make sure down here that the exhaust is turned on. This exhaust pulls out all the fumes and everything goes up and outside. So that has to be on. If you don't have that on, the laser cutter will not run. So now that I'm ready to go, I have the lid closed. I can either press the green button here to start it, or I can click over here on the green button. Important thing is you don't want to ever walk away from the laser cutter for any reason. You want to keep an eye on it. So I'm going to stay right here, and I'm going to hit play, and it's going to lower the bed or raise the bed according to what the measurement is. And the laser cutter head will move into position. It's going to do the black first, and then it'll do the cut. So we'll check back in a second. Okay, we're back, and we're looking at the red line now cutting. You see this done. So when the machine is done, it's going to return to its home position, the upper right. I'm going to give it just a few minutes for the fumes and stuff to gather. You can see that smoke is going on there. It's not good to be breathing that in. So let the exhaust do its job. And when we see all the fumes dissipate, we'll go ahead and open it up. It's kind of smoky. Take this off here. See, we have a nice clean cut. We have our two keychains that we made there. Okay, so that's beginning to end on how to use a laser cutter. These are simple designs, but it doesn't have to be a square or a circle. I happen to just pick these two, but it could be anything. It's a vector. A vector goes from one place to the other. You can do any kind of ornate design. Anything you draw in Illustrator can be cut on the laser cutter out of wood or acrylic. It can be engraved on glass or wood, or anything you can possibly think of. So look forward to seeing what you're going to make.